Now that you got a few ideas together that you're ready to show your client, in this case it's you, but going through the motion of how would you take these looks and create something that you can show a client that's worth showing them, that then gives a good direction for them to choose which way to go. So what I do next is I'll go ahead and zoom out a little bit. And again, we see our mood board. We got a lot of stuff going on here. We can clean this up if we want to. In this case, I'm just going to move things a little bit tighter here so I can make a brand new artboard. I'll hit Shift and the letter O to get my artboard tool. And I'll hold down the Alt key and I'll click and drag over here to create another artboard. Now, when you have an artboard and you have this toggle up top, Move Copy Artwork with Artboard selected, you'll notice this this black graphic came with it. And the reason why is because if I zoom in, it's barely touching that artboard. So it came with it as a copy when I brought a copy over. So the alternative would be to turn that off, and then when I drag a copy, it brings the size of the artboard, but it doesn't bring any of the artwork. You can work either way you want. The reason why I brought a copy over was so that way I can leave all of these over here in case I mess something up. I've got a backup to come back to, and I'll come over here and start working on these. Now, technically, we're moving past my mood board into my first comp. So what I'll usually do is hit Command Shift S. It's the same as going to File, Save As. And the reason why is I want to save a copy of this as an actual maybe a comp version 1. So V1, usually what I'll do is I'll do V1 as in the version 1. If I have multiple versions, or R1 if it's the first round. So maybe the first round I have multiple versions. Second round, so R2, maybe V1, V2, V3, if that makes any sense. That's just how I do it. This is my first round, so I'm just going to name this R1. So Derek Logo Comp R1. I'll hit Save. And I'll hit Save. These settings are fine. Okay, so now I'll have two documents that technically are identical right now. I'll have the one that we started with, that was the mood board, and now I've got this Logo Comp R1. So we just changed this file name and we're ready to go. So now I can always go back if I need to. All right, now what I'm going to do is clean up the things that I don't want to show. So all of these can go away. I'm just going to hit Delete. And that's kind of boring. I'll hit Delete. I'll hit Delete. I'm going to move these off of my canvas here. Get that out of the way. And what I'm trying to do is just create a presentation for my client to see, hey, here are some ideas that I want to present to you. So I'm going to clean these up just a little bit further here. And typically what I do is I show them in black and white. So if I want to show color, the way I do it is kind of, I don't know if you want to call it tricky, but let's just drag a shape here. I'm going to click on it once, and we need to resize this thing. So I hit the letter E, and then I can click and drag. And what I was looking for, I'm not seeing, oh, it's right here. It was hiding. Click on this transform button. There we go. Now I can key in the width and the height. So this is an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So right now it's 11 inches wide. So if we cut this in half, it'd be 5.5 inches. And the height would still be 8.5 inches tall. The reason why I did that now is so I've got basically split this in half. And I'm going to line this to the artboard. So I'll line it to the right edge, to the center. So now I have this basically 50-50. Exactly. Okay. So what I'm going to do is on the left hand side, I'll put the logos in black, and on the right hand side, I'll put the logos in white, but I'll put them over a color so I can kind of show the brand color, but without really applying color to the logo. It's kind of a trick I do. That way it has the connotation of the brand, but you're not using the color as a crutch for the logo, and you'll see what I mean in just a second. So what I'm going to do is click on this gradient tab. I'm going to click on radial gradient, which will apply radial gradient to this. I'll hit the letter G to get my gradient tool. I'm going to click and drag from about the top left to the bottom right to get a nice subtle gradient. And now I want to change this color. So I'll click once on this gradient slider. If you don't see this option, maybe you just see this, click on the little twirl down and click on Show Options. Okay, so I'm going to click on that little slider. I'm going to hit the I to get the eyedropper tool. And now I'm going to, let's see, I think it's Alt, no, I'm going to Shift. Yeah, it's Shift click on that color swatch to apply it. If I didn't hold down Shift, what it would do, so for example, I've got this square selected. If I don't hold down Shift, it'll just replace that whole gradient with whatever fill I click on. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo. So I'm going to click on this little color swatch down here and hold down Shift and click on the darker blue. So I've got the lighter blue and the darker blue. It's a very, very subtle effect, very subtle. But now I'm just rearranging these so the dark one is in the bottom corner and the light one's kind of up. It's very subtle, but that way it kind of gets a smooth gradient from the top left to the bottom right, just to add some visual dynamic interest, I guess you could call it. So now what I'm going to do is finish up these logos here, and I'm just going to put them in black and white. So this logo here, I'm going to turn off I'm going to get rid of that fill. I'm going to select this whole thing and let's just make it black. And these are a couple options we'll bring back in. So here's one option. Now technically I would consider all of these one variation. They're all using the same font and very similar icons. So if you're going to send this to a client, you really should take the time to make 3 totally different looks with different fonts. In this case, they're basically the same thing. But this is how I would package this up to send. So I'll get this up there. I'll hit Command G to make sure that's grouped. I'll highlight all that. Hit Command G to make sure that's grouped. And I'm going to leave this one grayscale actually, so they can see the depth that I'm thinking. I'm going to drag this over, drag a copy by holding down the Alt key, Command, Shift, and right bracket to bring it to the front. I'm going to hit the eyedropper tool and just click right here on the white to make the whole thing white. Shift click to drag that over to the center. And now you can see how we totally lose that depth when it's in white. But that's why I do it this way, so you can see how is your logo going to translate. So I'll drag this copy over, it's behind that object, so Command, Shift, right bracket to bring it to the front. I for my eyedropper tool, and I'll click on the white. And then this one is the last version here. I'll drag it over, Command, Shift, right bracket to bring it to the front. Eyedropper tool. There we go. Okay, now what we want to do is align these. So I'm going to click and drag on all of them. I'll come up here to align, and I'll align to the selection. I'll make sure they're horizontal. And then I'm going to vertically distribute the centers here. So now they're aligned that way. Now I'm going to hit Command G to group them. And then I'm going to drag a copy of this background over here. I'm just going to change the color, throw it to the back. And the reason why, let's align this to the left side. Oop, align it to the artboard. Align to the left side and centered. I'm going to click and drag to highlight all of this. And then I'm just going to click one more time on this background layer. And what that does, I wasn't pushing anything else. I just clicked once on it. It will tell the alignment options to align to the key object. So the key object is now this background. If I click once on this object, it makes this the key object. But I want the background to be the key object because I want to align my logos horizontally and vertically, so that way they're perfect. Now I can click on that background and delete it and do the same thing over here. So I'm going to click once on that logo. I'm going to shift click over here against that. I'll click one more time to make this my key object. I'm going to align them to the top. And then for the bottom logo, I'll click once, shift click over here, and then now without touching anything else, click once to make that my key object. And now align that to the bottom. Okay, so now all I have to do is click and drag on these over here, shift click to remove my background from this selection, because right now I just want to align it to the selection. Whoops, not aligned that way, but distributed. And now I want to center them, Command G to group, shift click the background to get that part of the selection. And now without touching anything else, I'll click one more time to make that my key object. I'll make it horizontal and vertically centered. There we go. And now we've got 2 side-by-side looks at a few different logo options. Okay, and then typically what I would do to wrap this up, I would just drop in some numbers. So I'll hit the type tool, put number 1, drag a copy down here, and hit Command D to quickly step another one down there at the same distance apart. Number 2 and number 3. And if I have 2 looks that are basically the same thing, in this case these are identical, so I might put this as 2A and this one as 2B. All right, and that is what I would send to a client just like this. One more thing though, to get it out of the box, we're going to learn that in the next lesson. I'm going to go through and show you how I export these artboards to send for comps.